Namaste everyone. Welcome you to Arshasam Yoga YouTube channel. This is a continuation of a short series of engaging conversations with professionals in the field of yoga and allied subjects. Today we have Dr. Anoosha N Shastry, an accomplished Ayurvedic practitioner, doctor, graduate from Government Ayurvedic Medical College, Bangalore. Dr. Anoosha is currently living in Germany and she is working as a consultant in Ayurveda Institute in Germany. She's also the founder of Sanatana Academy, through which she is offering a holistic well-being with the synthesis of yoga, Ayurveda, and Bharatanatyam. She's also a long-term practitioner of yoga and a Bharatanatyam dancer. I'm very happy to say she's also an old friend of mine. So I welcome you, Anoosha, to the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's very glad to be here. It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Arvind and Medha.
Hi, Anoosha, and thank you for joining us. So we'll get started. So a lot of people have heard about Ayurveda and they're aware of it to some degree at least. But how would you suggest that people inculcate Ayurveda in their lifestyle? How do you go about starting this?
Okay, so yes, as you said, Ayurveda has been imbibed, usually knowingly or unknowingly, especially in India, we would be following a lot many Ayurvedic principles. That is because Ayurveda is an age-old tested subject. So let's not call it tested. It's been in practice and it is an established subject that is actually accepted and has been practiced for over a period of time. See, the very word Ayurveda means the science of life. Ayu, when we split it, Ayu is the life and Veda is the science. So it is the science of life. It's not nothing like, okay, I'm following certain thing in a day and that is Ayurveda. No, it is how we live. So in general, what is health? Health is the complete well-being in terms of physical, mental, emotional, social, and also spiritual. Yes, I'm repeating, not religious or philosophical, but spiritual well-being. So when all these things are put together, then that state of well-being is called as the health, right? So how can a person inculcate health? So there are many other healthy ways, and it is also important to know the principles behind it. Instead of blindly following this is good or that is not, the mindfulness actually creates that awareness, and that is what is required. Therefore, the simplest thing is that to be aware of our body. For that, in the present day situation, there are so many professionals who study Ayurveda for years together, and then anybody can take their help to know what exactly suits their body the best. But there are certain general principles like dinacharya, what is to be done on regular basis, and seasonal regime called as the ritucharya, what are to be followed. For example, there are certain things that we need to do in summer, we need to do in winter. So this awareness is very important. These things, of course, self-studies like reading Ashtanga Hridaya, for example. It's one of the beautiful treatises in Ayurveda, and it simplifies things. And by reading these things, we will have one simple idea of what to be done. But properly, when a person can get assessed from a professional, and there are so many portals. Just the discipline is important, that we need to go and approach it in a very right way and inculcate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is a nice understanding that, it's Ayu is life and Veda is the knowledge of life. So related to that question is, when in India, when we compare Ayurveda with allopathy, for example, common understanding is that allopathy treats the symptoms, whereas Ayurveda is person. So, for example, in COVID times also, like strengthening the immunity is what Ayurveda does, whereas attacking the virus itself is what allopathy does. This is a common understanding. Would you like to elaborate on that, like how it works?
Oh, definitely. Thank you for bringing this particular subject, because this is something all over the world. Of course, the whole world is under this pandemic situation, and there are so many discussions happening about this. Of course, as you said, this is the time wherein we don't look at the symptoms. Of course, to get diagnosed, okay, I have cough, I have cold, I have these symptoms, so let me go. That is there, but that is on the acute phase. Okay, if there are some symptoms, immediately what needs to be done? Of course, allopathy is an amazing science, wonderful science for the acute symptoms, for an emergency. Of course, there are things in Ayurveda as well that we can do for emergency. But as you rightly mentioned one thing, Ayurveda treats the person. Yes, not just the symptoms, but we say in Ayurveda, Nidhanam Parivarjayet. Nidhana is the root cause. Whatever the cause that is causing the problem, we need to eliminate the cause. So when I'm saying this thing, there is actually one beautiful principle in Ayurveda that every Ayurvedic professional or anybody who follows Ayurveda, we need to keep in mind. They say, Swastasya Swastya Rakshanam, Aturasya Vikara Prashamanam. So Ayurveda does not only treat the disease of a deceased individual, but also it aims at promoting the health of a healthy individual. So this is where the importance of lifestyle and how do we like certain principles that is we followed, all these things comes to we have to focus on these things here. So when coming to this point, yes, during the pandemic, of course, allopathy, the modern science, of course, this is a novel virus, they say, and it is something that has to be, that is new, and we don't know how does that work. Let's tackle the virus. Yes. But we have observed that in India specifically, there is, when we compare the ratio, people who are using Ayurveda, their immunity is naturally a little bit higher. And then building the immunity, we build the complete system. We strengthen the body. So that is a natural barrier against most of the other symptoms. Therefore, again, it is not like allopathy is entirely different. Ayurveda is, it's not two different approaches. Of course, Ayurveda has already mentioned these things in terms of Janapadodvamsa. There are certain chapters already mentioned about the pandemic and such related problems and how to tackle such situations. It is already mentioned in Ayurveda. But it also depends that Ayurveda is not a generalized medicine. It's not like one medicine fits for all. No. It is like, it is tailor-made, it is customized, it is personalized. So what works for me might not work for you. That principle is where Ayurveda differs from every other thing, and that adaptation to the situation is what is required. And definitely strengthening is a barrier. Therefore, perspective differs, but it is a healthy amalgamation between the system, and integration is the key in the present situation.
So you mentioned just now that generalization does not work. You know, the customization is the key in Ayurveda. But one thing we observe today, that all the medicines in Ayurveda are mass produced. So in the old days, probably how it was the Vaidya used to probably prepare it then and there and send it over for that patient, or customized preparation. But we don't have that anymore. It's difficult to cater to the population. So do you feel this reduces the efficacy of the medicine, this mass production?
Okay, basically, yes. Since I told you that Ayurveda is generalized, we go by two principles. See, it is like any medicine that we give, it's not like, as I already told you, it's not like one paracetamol for fever. No, even if it is fever, we go for another concept of Prakriti and Vikriti in Ayurveda. So before coming to the medicine specifically, this Prakriti, we have three bioconstituents in Ayurveda, namely Vata, Pitta and Kapha, and any person by birth will be assigned to certain Prakriti, the constitution of the body. Any deviation from that is called the Vikriti, and that abnormalcy has to be, we have to just see that is a dosha, and we have to bring that back to normalcy. Like what for Vata Prakriti person, what is conducive, what is not. So all these medications, what we advise to the patients in the deceased condition, let's say, so that will be specific to what Prakriti the person belongs to, the constitution of the person. The mass production of the medicines these days, of course, sometimes they are based on the classical formulation. When I say classical formulation, these are based on the three main treatises that we base every principles of Ayurveda, the Brihatrayis, and we have Lagutrayis. Like this, we have certain treatises in Ayurveda. So any classical formulation based on these treatises, we also have the concept of how the medicine is to be procured, the herbs to be procured, how do we process, how do we produce the medicine, what ratio. If all these things are practiced, you might also see certain times in some of the medications, it will be written reference from so and so. So if that is actually properly practiced, there are certain medications which the efficacy is maintained, but there is this concept of new innovative patented drugs, so making different combinations out of it. Because of the lack of availability of certain drugs, of course these things are required, but in these situations we need to go by the basic concepts. How does these work? Because in the Ayurvedic text itself, they have mentioned if there is no availability of so and so, what to do. The solution as well has been mentioned. So beautiful is the Ayurvedic treatises. Therefore, there is this concept of yukti pramana. We need to know the guna, vidya, vipaka. So these are like, we have certain principles wherein we go by the characteristics, the functions, how does that work, and when once it is working on the body, what will be the byproduct. All these things, sometimes even if the drugs are not available, even if it is produced in a different combination, when we go to the basics of basic units and the understanding of these things, probably that replacement is still possible. Therefore, what is important is, yes, of course, sometimes the efficacy cannot be maintained. Sometimes the non-availability of the drugs, but a professional Ayurvedic person who have studied Shastras will be in a better position to apply the yukti and then correlate if it is working or not. That's the reason it is very important. Ayurveda cannot be studied in a day or two, and it has to be studied from the basics. And that's that way we can actually regulate what works on individual person's body.
That's an interesting point. You spoke about the Brihatrayi, Lagutrayi, the different scriptures, and you also spoke about the tailor-made medicines. Like in the ancient times, we used to see the particular requirements of the patient and then tailor make it and then provide it. But in today's context, we have a comparison again with different systems. People tend to take sides and tend to say that because the paracetamol works across the board, across everybody, whoever takes it, the problem will be addressed. But in Ayurveda, we have tailor-made, like for your particular problem, this particular medicine is better. This way we address. And again, people, accusing or rather, being harsh towards Ayurveda and saying that it is pseudoscience. It cannot be trusted. It's not 100% scientific. It doesn't match up to our, standards. How do you address this?
See, basically, yes, when, let's see, we have to see this in two perspectives. One, in the Western perspective, wherein Ayurveda is, most of the times it is perceived to be religious, and they tag it with mythology. Of course, when we describe certain things, the descent of Ayurveda, how did it come, depending upon the belief of the Indian subcontinent, of course, we tag it with the long term, how it came and all these things, but Ayurveda is universal. So why is it tagged pseudoscience? Is because the lack of understanding. That is the first thing. Because all the Ayurvedic treatises are in Sanskrit, and in the present day situation, the knowledge in Sanskrit is a little towards the depletion, let's say. Of course, there are many people who are really trying their best to maintain, propagate and promote the authentic knowledge of Samskrita as well as Ayurveda. But the lack of understanding of the subject makes it complex at the first place. See, because there is no generalized form. It's not like one thing works for all. Therefore, it is a little above our understanding. Oh, this science is complex. Oh, this is pseudoscience. Oh, we really can't rely on this. And the other thing is, we don't set certain parameters in Ayurveda. It's not like 120 by 80 mmHg is not the generalized universal parameter for blood pressure. We depend that all the parameters are individually and It is specifically case specific, let's say. So maybe the blood sugar or blood pressure, all these things, if a person can take that, depending upon the sattva in his body, like how much is his body constituents, if it's required, that way we don't generalize this on the mathematical numbers. That's the reason when we are not able to give that tangible figures, that generalization is not required basically. But in the present day situation, when it is required, we are that is to be produced, and when that is lacking, that's not tangible to the eyes, and that makes people just call it pseudoscience. So this is in the Western perspective. What happens in the Indian perspective is, again, anything that is called as the home remedy, people tend to do. Okay, sometimes it does work. Like how they say, even in the Western medicine, just don't do self-medication, they say. Don't go over the counter, don't buy drugs, or don't buy any of the medications unless you are prescribed. That way, for one part of Ayurveda, the lifestyle and regime can always be followed. But the other part, wherein people tend to go for home remedies and self-medication, that is the point wherein the system is failing, or the system is blamed upon. This is causing a lot of confusion and terming that as pseudoscience. Definitely, Ayurveda is not pseudoscience. Ayurveda says you need to believe in this. It is mentioned. We need to start understanding that. We need to start applying that in day-to-day life. That is when we will be able to produce the evidence. So delving deeper into the science is the answer for how to call it the actual proven science. So that's how it works.
So while we're on the subject of Ayurveda being a universal science, so one thing I have to ask you, is it restricted to the Indian subcontinent, or does it work universally across the world for all races, all countries, all people in whatever kind of situation that country might be? Like, some countries are extreme cold, some are extreme heat, but still, would Ayurveda work, or is there some modification we need to do to apply?
Also, as a follow-up, many of these herbs which are mentioned in the scriptures are available in India primarily. Outside of India, how do they manage with the herbs? Because those herbs are not native to that particular land. Then how does
Perfect, perfect. This is a beautiful question, and something thanks for bringing this up, because there is this concept. This is definitely, you came to the point. There is this concept, Ayurveda is Indian medicine, it was only in India. Ayurveda, if we need to follow Ayurvedic principles, we have to adopt Indian lifestyle. Eat like Indian, eat Indian cuisine, or it's like do everything like what is specifically done in India. But yes, Ayurveda is Indian medicine. It has been formulated in such a way that it has been followed in India for over a period of time. It has been originated in India, and the principles are very conducive to India. But the principles mentioned in Ayurveda is universal. It's not restricted to India. For example, health. Health is not just for Indians. It is all across the world, right? In the same way, whatever, all the other principles, for example, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, these are the fundamental principles, like how a body constitutes of. It's not very much restricted to India. And the principles, it's important for us to understand that, and we should be in a position to apply it to the region, regionally, like Medha said. It's like a country is a cold country or extreme temperatures. It's not like just the Indian food works everywhere. So Ayurveda is such, it is so versatile, and it is so beautifully done that it can be adopted in various cultures. And we give importance to one thing called as the Satmyata in Ayurveda. It's not like imposing some other thing and just trying to follow the same thing, but making some alterations in their own lifestyle, in their own culturally conducive environment. So how do we do this? How do we bring these universal principles into practice in other countries? I have been living here in Munich, that is in Germany. So in countries like Germany, there culturally, the food, all these things, certain practices are entirely different. Probably over a period of time, let's just come for the example of bread. Bread has been in their culture. Because in India, when you see, generally, there are different types of food that has been very much conducive for regionally also that matters in India. If I ask a German person to get up early in the morning and eat something made of rice, probably they wouldn't be able to accept it. Or if it is really required, they will definitely do. But that adaptation, how do we do it? And simple, minute changes. If it is really hurting their body, how to change that or make some changes depending upon the basic core principles is very much required. So how do we address these problems? Even in India, there is this concept of avoid rice, avoid carbohydrates. All these things are there, but how do we? Why that whole concept? It is coming from misinformation or half-baked information. Rice is conducive to a South Indian, whereas wheat is conducive to a North Indian. So the regionally growing crops or the regional food practices are conducive to the body, and what the body starts accepting from the childhood is very much important. So depending upon that, if something is in excess, let us address that. Therefore, that addressing that, going to the point and sticking on to the basic principles gives us the complete perspective of how it has to be done, rather than merely telling, yes, follow just Indian things. But I am a little biased here. Many of the Indian things that has been practiced for ages together are really, that is very much conducive and in sync with the Ayurvedic principles. Because Ayurveda has been for ages together in India. Therefore, depending upon the region, there can be little alterations made, and then the extreme things can be cut down and Ayurvedic principles can be used. It is definitely universal.
This is such a subtle and such a refined understanding of health, really, Ayurveda. It really mesmerizes me every time I know this. Like, the food should be grown in appropriate time, in the appropriate region. Like you said, South Indians eat rice. It's more conducive for them, and North Indians wheat is more conducive. It's so region specific. So it's so innate to us, like so beautifully designed. How did you get into this field? Like what interested you in the beginning, to take up Ayurveda and to become a professional in this field?
Okay, so yes, I had this background of yoga and Bharatanatyam, all these things. I was introduced to the holistic approaches even before I wanted to choose Ayurveda. Coming to the Ayurvedic field as a professional was purely, I would say, it was a blessing in disguise. I wouldn't call it accidental, but it was blessing in disguise. I wanted to pursue something with medicine. This is an honest answer. So I wanted to pursue something with medicine, and I wanted to know human body, and I wanted to be in a position to help other people. I was introduced to yoga in a very tender age, but along with yoga, certain Ayurvedic principles in my dance class, maybe, or in my family, my parents, they used to just follow these things, but it was not like I wanted to learn this as a science. So as a blessing in disguise, I entered this field. But when I entered this field, I was a little hesitant. I was a little reluctant as well. Oh, what is this? Is this for true? Is this like, yes, pseudoscience? That has been, we would have been fed with such things, right? Does this really work? I used to question a lot. I was not in a position to even accept it blindly. But over a period of time, I even had thought, if this is not working, if I'm not convinced with the science, I'll just get back to something else. This was what in my mind. But I was not closing myself for all these basic principles and other stuff what we were taught. The first year of Ayurveda as a professional study is where we get all the foundation. With an open mind, I started accepting things. I started getting deeper into it. Maybe the inquisitive, the curiosity of what exactly is this? That actually, my professors in the college, the way they brought up the Samhita and Siddhanta, all these principles, the philosophy behind Ayurveda, the darshanas, it was interesting for me. And with what I entered Ayurvedic professional course, like, let me just try, that actually, I started accepting Ayurveda, and Ayurveda embraced me, and there was no turning back. I did not want to get back to any other science. And basically, when we actually study Ayurveda in a very specific beautiful way and getting inside the Shastras, it actually lets us know that we have to accept everything. Just like Sri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, whatever amazing things are there all over the world, you have to take that and inculcate within yourself. So that integration is possible in Ayurveda. Ayurveda allows me to explore different things. Therefore, Ayurveda has been I embraced Ayurveda.
That's very nice. So do you feel Ayurveda as a subject has changed throughout the ages? Like, it's a very old science, more than 5,000 years old, they say. Do you feel there has been any kind of dilution or change or anything as it has, traveled through time, through the ages?
Ayurveda has evolved, but I wouldn't say it has changed. Of course, I'm not speaking about the misinformation or following according to their own convenience. No, I'm not speaking about that aspect here. But due course of time, as I told you, just like how lifestyle has been changed, there are certain things that are conducive for the present day situation, and there needs to be some changes. Therefore, Ayurveda has been over a period of time evolved, and for example, in the present day practice, what is available here around us? I'm going back to like the previous question when you asked, how is it accepted in the West? So to customize it to the other parts of the world, there has been some changes, some modifications made, but not differing from the basic principles. I have been repeatedly saying basic principles, because Ayurveda is so strong with its foundation. Therefore, it has definitely evolved. When, for example, the modifications, I said bread is conducive here in the West. So how do we ask them to stick on to the warm food concept that we say? In Ayurveda, we say no cold food. It's not good for your body, not good for your digestive system. So if they're eating bread, we ask them to combine it with mindfully eat it, make warm it, or go for a porridge along with that, instead of just going with some cold stuff. So that way, these modifications are definitely based on the principles. There are evolution, but it's like as per the requirement. So understanding as per the requirement is important, and Ayurveda molds itself as per the requirement. So, but it's also important. We should not do that in extreme. Not completely going away from the basic shastras, basic science, basic what is to be followed, and doing something or calling it as modern Ayurveda, calling it as some different Ayurveda. No, that is not to be done. Ayurveda should be Ayurveda always.
No, this is an interesting because in YouTube, for example, if you have any particular problem, like you have headache, for example, Ayurvedic medicines for headache, if you just put, there are like a lot of 2-minute gyans available. Like, like I keep saying, it's like 2-minute noodles. It's like, just do this, and then your problem will be solved. These kind of short gyans and short answers and tidbits of information just available free everywhere. Many of these Indian sciences, be it Ayurveda, Yoga, Vedanta, we recommend them to be learned in a such and such a way, in a traditional way. Go through step A, step B, step C, and serially you learn, you will have a holistic understanding. Versus today we have like 2-minute gyan. You being a professional in the field of Ayurveda, how do you address these short ideas and tidbits of information and
As you said, in 2 minutes, what claims to be 2 minutes Maggi noodles, that itself cannot be done in 2 minutes. Forget about the bigger science of learning in 2 minutes gyan. Okay, coming to this, the real concept, let us study everything in 30 seconds, not just in Ayurveda, most of the sciences that has been like all the holistic sciences, including yoga, natya, all these things. This is something we have to be very careful, and it has to be addressed. And yes, there are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. If for a headache to manifest itself, there will be 6 stages of manifestation according to Ayurveda. For any disease to manifest, for any discomfort to manifest, it undergoes 6 different stages. Like there has to be sanchaya, the accumulation, and then prakopa, the aggravation, and then it will go and then manifest. So disease will not come suddenly. There has to be a triggering factor. The same way, if it has to subside, again, it will take certain time. It's not like we sow a seed today and tomorrow it grows like a tree. That patience is required, and the amount of care that we see, again, if you sow a seed, you have to water it, you have to give enough fertilization, and then the sunlight is required. Over a period of time, when we are nourishing it, it grows into a proper, complete, fruitful tree. Similarly, if we want to learn Shastra, the seeds of thoughts, the seeds of interest has to be sown first, and then it has to deep-rootedly grow, and then strongly it has to hold. So learning Shastra and implying it is very important, and there is no shortcut for that. So when once that happens, then the tree grows, and then we will be able to grow towards the greater heights, and then when once the tree is properly grown, the tree would be able to give shade to others as well. So if we intend in the bigger things, if we intend to stay strong to the science and stay to help others authentically and specifically, there are no shortcuts. The 2 minutes gyans, yes, of course, just to say, there is Ayurveda. Let's accept in the present day situation, certain publicity is required. So some to build up curiosity, that might work, but that will definitely work, definitely not work like a complete remedy. And it's my request, please do not follow such 2 minute things and try to implement that without consulting a proper professional.
Wonderful.
Right. So, on this topic of following what you see on the internet, so these days a lot of people follow some diets and other eating habits they see on the internet also. Especially, we see this calorie conscious behavior. Count what goes in and count how much you are getting rid of. So, does this mathematics work? You also mentioned that we don't have this number parameter system in Ayurveda. So how do we extend this to food also?
Hitabhuk, Rutubhuk, Mitabhuk. So eat mindfully. Eat according to what is required, what your body asks for. Body knows what it requires. For example, sometimes people go for keto diets and sugar deficit diets. So when they do that, after some time, the body starts craving for sugar. The body starts asking for it. You see something. Of course, we say we have to control our hunger, control your cravings, yes, that apart. But if you're not giving the proper essential nutrients to the body will not ask, the body will not be in a situation to give you that energy what is required. Then starts the overfeeding, then starts the different problems like loss of appetite and the metabolism disorders, all these things. So, Hitabhuk is eat in proper quantities and eat in the mild conducive quantities and what your body needs. According to Ayurveda, we have the Shat Rasa principle. We have 6 different tastes, and any food has to be a combination of all these things and conducive to your body. And Mitabhuk, don't overload yourself. But Mitabhuk is not just don't overloading, it also Mitabhuk is not even eating less, not making the deficit of what is required. And Rutubhuk, eat seasonally. So what is available, what is better for that season. So this mindful eating is very important according to Ayurveda. The counting of calories, counting of, if these things are actually followed, it is actually all the mathematical equations, whatever it is already taken care. Ayurveda will never emphasize on no carbs, eat only proteins, or no rice, no wheat. No, eat what you can digest. It is beautifully said that you're not what you eat, but you are what you digest. So if a person is able to digest the food, if a person is able to properly, there are different, if you go to an Ayurvedic professional, the first thing we check is how is your Agni? Is your digestive fire working properly? Is your metabolic fire, if your metabolism is correct? So any sort of disease or whatever we do, we start from correcting the Agni, the Deepana, the Pachana, that is the appetizing and the carminative procedures, correcting the metabolic principles. All these things are very important. So if we do calorie deficit diets, the metabolism, the root of how it is happening, the cycle of digestion, that is disturbed. We really don't want to do that. And when once the proper nutrients are not going for the body starts engulfing its own tissues. So that leads to different problems like hyperacidity, gastritis. So in order to avoid all these things, taking care of Agni and giving proper fuel at proper time whenever you're hungry. Ayurveda says eat whenever you're hungry. So in order to keep that cycle properly functioning, it is really important that we don't go by the mathematical numbers and go for the calorie deficit diets. But how much ever we eat, it is important that we give the physical activity and also the happiness that we get with the food, the mental contentment. Oh, I have eaten so much. If I start worrying, possibly the body cannot digest that. But that doesn't mean I overeat and yeah, I'm happy I ate too much. That's the reason, mindful eating. Pitta book, Mita book, and Rutu book. We emphasize on this. And that is when we make the calorie deficit things or overeating or eating less, that leads to the concept of ama, like the unwanted toxins in the body that is accumulating. So that once again, when all these things happens, you have to again start with your Agni, bring that back to balance. Therefore, it is the whole science, maybe because of all these intricate things, it is difficult for people to follow. But when once we have the understanding of this, it is really easy to know what we are eating and to digest what we have eaten.
I think what makes it difficult to follow is, like you said, Hita book, Ritu book, Mitu book, it requires you to be mindful of what you're eating in the first place. But here, in my generation, I see a lot of people like we are eating what something is going on in front. There is a laptop on or a TV is on and you're watching it and you're eating it. Forget about mindfulness. We don't even know what we are actually eating.
Exactly.
Obviously, yes. Then we thought, the moment we put food on a plate, we calculate there only. Okay, this much amount of calories will be good. So analyzing and intellectualizing everything, I think this is the root.
That's true. That's true. Like, see, discipline. Even if it is yoga, we say it nobody starts directly from do whatever you want, do all the non-conducive things and do dhyana. Does not work. It's like it has to go step by step. That's why it's mentioned like yama, niyama, asana, pranayam. So it's like it has to come from the discipline. That discipline is important. And doing things certain like in this generation, of course, it's boring. It's boring to just look at the food and eat it. But if we start doing such boring things over a period of time, inculcating that gives us discipline. Only when that discipline is imbibed, we will be able to focus on what we are doing, and that focus is really important. Unless that focus is there, forget about the bigger things. Even the smaller physical entities, we will not be able to achieve. Then starts the mental problem. Then starts the metaphysical, the emotional problem. So that's why I keep telling in our generation, not just health is not just physical, mental, emotional, spiritual well-being, but and social well-being, but also the digital well-being. So digitally, if we are the digital things are taken care, the other things normally naturally comes to places.
Any message you would like to give, because we have International Yoga Day coming and a lot of yoga enthusiasts, practitioners, teachers watching this. Any message you would like to give to them particularly?
Yes, definitely. These sciences, especially the holistic sciences, the Indian sciences, these are all integral part of each other. So it's not like I only practice yoga, I only practice Ayurveda. Yoga is an integral part of Ayurveda. All these holistic approaches, they definitely uplift the well-being of in different stages. As I told, the overall health will be maintained. So it is important to understand first, imply what has been mentioned and what has been told over a period of time. So instead of just randomly, of course, the questioning, the curiosity, the evidence-based thoughts, yes, it is welcome. But instead of just asking the questions, we have to first get into the science, understand it, practice it over a period of time. Probably by this process, we would have found the answers for ourselves. Even after doing all these things, if there are questions, then definitely there are people who have been doing this for ages together, they will definitely answer our questions. We can go in search of the answers for these questions. But before practicing anything, we will not be in a situation to ask any questions. So my humble request to everybody is to cultivate that discipline, to follow, to just get into the depth of all these sciences, to do the things with discipline, and then first start accepting the science. Then naturally the science itself will embrace. And the science, it just shows what exactly is to be done. So please stay safe, stay healthy, build your natural immunity, keep faith in the holistic approaches, and keep practicing it with utter faith, discipline, and by heart.
Thank you so much, Anusha. That was a very nice message. And also thank you for your time and for joining us here today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You guys have been doing a wonderful thing, and propagating holistic sciences, Vedanta, yoga, Ayurveda, these things in its authentic form is a very big responsibility on our generation, because that has to be preserved, protected, propagated, promoted in its authentic way. So I wish you all the best, and my gratitude for having me here. And it was my pleasure to share my small bit of knowledge. And thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing, and all the best to you.
All the best to you. Thank you.
Thank you.